Albert Breer is the Monday Morning Quarterback senior NFL reporter, and he joins us now. Albert, I was curious about when the NFL is building its schedule, how long is this process, and how do you start, how do you finish?
Well, first of all, happy 40th birthday, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Um, it actually starts like the minute the regular season ends, because at that point, of course, we know who's playing who. And, this has changed over the years. I remember when I first started doing this story, and Peter King did it at such a high level for so many years and covering all of this. But it almost seemed like at first it was like, when I first started doing this, it was sort of like a tournament almost, the way that they would narrow it and narrow it and narrow it. And it's not really that way anymore. They run like a hard to calculate number of combinations through their computers and through, what they do with AWS. And, what they spit out about 6,000, what they would call playable schedules, right? Like based on all the filters they have in it and everything else. And then, from those 6,000, they narrow that down and they find what they call the leader. And then over the last couple of weeks, the leader is pitted against other schedules where they actually go through it like by hand and compare one to the next. And can you beat the leader? And the leader might get knocked off, and then another schedule becomes the leader. And now you try to beat that one until you come up with what you end up with, which was, Tuesday afternoon, I believe it was, they had the final edition that they had.
But how do you keep score of, you got a leader in the clubhouse, and then how does another schedule get better than the one that you think is going to be the leader?
Well, I think it's like, you go through it and then you troubleshoot, like, okay, like here are 5 issues, because none of it's going to be perfect, right? So here are 5 issues that we have with this schedule. And is there one that could solve those issues? And then, it's like, all right, well, those 5 issues are solved, but now there are 7 issues over here, So I think they try to get it to the point where there are enough, where it's perfect enough, I guess is the way to put it. And look, like, I think the huge part of this, as is like how they've, like how many demands they have from their partners now, from the networks, from the streaming partners. Like, I try to explain this to people. I think if you go back 15 or 20 years, there were tiers to how much these cost the networks, right? So in other words, like ESPN was paying X amount less for Monday Night Football than what, NBC was paying for Sunday Night Football. So it was very easy for the NFL to go to ESPN and say, well, NBC is paying this much more than you are. So, tough, like you're going to get a worse schedule. Now, I'd say, especially with the latest, rounds of negotiations, those numbers are closer and everybody's paying an astronomical amount to broadcast these games, and you want them to keep paying that amount. So like they're trying to keep everybody happy, and there's more equity, I think, across the board, which is why they've turned every game into a free agent, which is why they're more, like they put like a higher level of demands on teams. Like, I don't know if you saw the Rams schedule, but it is a gauntlet when it comes to travel and short weeks and all of that different stuff. It's why, like, if you look at it now, and this is, I mean, you remember there was a time, Dan, when everybody played at least one primetime game. Well, now there are more primetime games, but there are more teams maxing out too. There are 8 teams, and I can name them. I can pull them up here. There are 8 teams that are playing either 6 or 7 primetime games. I guess these would be the marquee teams, right? And those 8 are the Cowboys, Eagles, Bears, Packers, Seahawks, Bills, Chiefs, and Rams. Meanwhile, there are 5 teams, the Jets, Titans, Raiders, Cardinals, and Dolphins, that aren't playing any primetime games as well. So, like, the rules of engagement here have changed. And, I think as...
But if Arch Manning is with the Raiders this year, the Raiders have a primetime game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But Fernando Mendoza is not going to get a... We don't know when he's going to play.
You don't know when he's going to play.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so if you're going to put them in a primetime window, you might do it later in the year. And you can always flex and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's 100%. That's a huge part of it, like I think it's the curb appeal of each of these teams. And it's not like necessarily getting you or I, because we're probably going to be sitting there on the couch anyway watching the games. It's how do you get like the more casual fan engaged. And a lot of times with the teams that are further down the line that are worse teams, like you have to have something that you can kind of wrap your arms around from a storyline perspective. And those five teams, like you can see where the storylines are sort of lacking with those.
Would you have opened up with Seattle facing New England in a Super Bowl rematch?
This is an interesting question because I think you do like I've gotten a lot of questions over the last 24 hours on like how much the Vrabel storyline has to do with this. I I actually think it might. Now, I asked Hans Schroeder, who's the head of broadcasting in the NFL, about this yesterday, and he said it didn't. But if you want to be a cynic about this,
Yeah, I
and
don't think they would be honest with you on that, Albert.
yeah, I mean, I don't either. And if you want to be a cynic about it, like like it's like the same thing with the Super Bowl. You got everybody bitching and moaning about who the halftime show is every year. Again, that's not about like the football fan. That's about pulling in the casual viewer. And I think, if you put Mike Vrabel in the in that Wednesday night slot, there might be some curiosity from people like that don't really follow the league like you or I do, that are like, oh yeah, like I remember that story back in May and June. Maybe I won't go out for that hike, this afternoon. Maybe I will sit down and watch football this afternoon because I want like an update on where things are with that guy that I was paying so much attention to and my social media was plastered with through, April and May. If you want to be a cynic, you could look at it that way where you could say, okay, if it was the Patriots or the Bears, like the Patriots might have more appeal to the casual fan because of the tabloid nature of the story that we've all been, like it seems like America's been locked in on over the last month or so. I personally think from a football perspective, the Bears might have been the more interesting team. It's a bigger market, and
I
I
agree.
think there's like more curiosity with Caleb Williams. That the Super Bowl wasn't very competitive. So do you want to see that again? I think from a pure football perspective, Chicago might have actually made more sense. But as we all know, it's bigger than just that.
I am curious about football night in America.
Hmm.
Somebody is going to do a sit down with Mike Vrabel, I'm going to guess, getting ready to show you that game.
Hmm.
I'm curious how much of this off the field, the Diana Rossini portion of this Mike Vrabel story can come up in an interview
Yeah.
that is maybe not football related.
Yeah.
It's almost football adjacent. So can you, if you send Jason Garrett to do a sit down, one on one,
Yeah.
what can you ask that would be pertinent to the actual game itself while also acknowledging that this has to have been a distraction? This,
Right.
he left the last day of the draft to go to
Yeah.
counseling. So, how do you make it a sports story?
So if I was on the other end, if I was sitting across from him in that setting and I'm Jason Garrett or I'm Rodney Harrison or whoever else, um, first of all, I think part of it is relative to whether or not he's done the whatever you want to call it, the Today Show interview between now and then, right? Because if he has actually sat down and addressed it in full, it'd be easier for you, if you're NBC, to just say, well, we've all moved on from that. He's addressed it. If he hasn't addressed it by then I think it becomes the elephant in the room if you don't address it, right? Like, because if it's still sitting out there as something that hasn't been, fully vetted or gone through in that sort of setting, and you're the first one to get him one on one since this happened, then I think it becomes the elephant in the room if you don't address it,
Yeah.
So I think, like, just from, having been in those sorts of seats before and, interviewing people in these sorts of settings, part of it does ride on how much of the subject matter has already been covered. And then I think the other piece of it is just kind of like, if you want to keep it in the football context, like the football context of it is relatively easy. Like, how does this affect, the way that you did your job in April and May and June? And how did it affect your relationship with your players? And you've preached about, about family and welcomed so many people's, spouses and children into the building, and you've made it that environment. Like, has this in any way affected your ability to do that? Like, I think that there are fair questions. And look, like, Mike's a logical guy. Mike's a really smart guy. I think Mike, deep down, is a really good guy. I really believe that. I've known him since he was a player. Like, I think he's a really good human being. Like, at his core. Um, I think he understands that this sort of question is going to come. And I think he's smart enough to navigate it. And if we could all be grown-ups about it, like, I think he would answer questions on it. Now, that's just me talking, but, like, I think as long as it wouldn't adversely affect the other people in his life, which is the wild card in all of this. How does this affect his wife? How does this affect his sons? I think, he would be, I'd imagine, like, he would take the questions. And I don't like, and I think he understands the way all of this works. He's, again, like, he's been in the public eye for so long, for more than half of his life. I think he kind of gets the rules of engagement here.
Talking to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback. How close are we to every team will have an international game?
You mean every year?
Yeah.
As soon as we get 18 games, I think it happens.
Okay. And when is 18 games happening?
Well, I mean, like, there's still that thing hanging out there that there's no date for the Super Bowl after the 2027 season in Atlanta, like, so I like that. To me, has been sort of the smoking gun on what their plans are for a long time now. The NFLPA has new leadership. JC Tretter's in as the executive director. What's his stance on 18 games? They haven't been that public about it yet. They let their feelings have been known on other subjects like the grass versus turf debate and all of that. So you got to figure all of that out. I did ask Peter O'Reilly, who's the head of events for the NFL, a month or two ago, like, when you actually have to set the date for that Atlanta Super Bowl, and he said you would have to set it, like, before the start of the season before that Super Bowl year. So that will be the start of this season. So can you move fast enough now to get something in place, an agreement in place for the 27 season? I think we're that close of where the owners want to do it. Whether or not they can pull it off that fast, they can't make that decision unilaterally. So a lot of it's gonna come down to the players of cooperation. But I will say this, like, I think when they go to 18 games, I think we're talking about a 16 game schedule of international. And I think then the rhythm becomes for teams that you play internationally once a year. And 1 year, that means 9 home games, 8 road games, and a neutral site. And then the following year, 8 home games, 9 road games, and a neutral site.
Are there any more live windows for the NFL to go after?
Um, that's a good question. I mean,
Friday night's off limits because of high school football.
it's high school football, right? And then Saturday is off limits because of college football and the rules there. And I think they should respect those, by the way. Um, like, Netflix has kind of, like, created this, like, events package almost, I think is what they would refer to it as, where they have a week 1 game, a week 18 game, 2 on Christmas and 1 on Thanksgiving Eve. Um, I just don't know what the holiday would be outside of what they've already covered. You know what I mean? And I think you see, like, the breaking point where they need more inventory. I had to look at the master schedule yesterday morning, and so I'm going through it, trying to digest as much as I can. And what was really jarring to me, Dan, was looking at week 16. And in week 16, which is the Christmas week, they have a Christmas Eve game, 3 Christmas Day games, 2 Saturday games, a Monday game, a Sunday night game. And so that Sunday afternoon window, CBS had 2 games in the early window, Fox had 2 games in the early window, and then they had 1 apiece in the late window, and that was it.
I know.
And 2 games are going to fall out from the Saturday cluster, so it'll be a little more than that. But I think it shows why they want 18 games, because they want more inventory. Um, but it also shows there maybe a little bit of a breaking point as far as, like, do we still respect Sunday as, like, what you and I grew up watching was, like, this like massive buffet of football, on Sunday at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. I love that. You know what I mean? So I'd hate to see that go away. So it's just gonna be interesting to see the way that's handled. I just don't know where the extra windows would be. Maybe it's Labor Day, and they go in on Labor Day and try to turn that into a big kickoff weekend if they don't want to move the Super Bowl even further back, and they do want to end they do want to have the second bye week. That would be one area I could see them going in. I'm not sure where the next broadcast window is, but if it's out there, I guarantee you that they're going to find it.
Thank you, Albert. Have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thanks, DP. Happy birthday.
Albert Breer. They like to call him Bert, the Monday morning quarterback.